Welcome to Christina Speaks. I'm excited to talk to Teresa Zilk today. Hi, Teresa. Thank you for coming on today.
Hi, Christina. Thank you for having me.
So, you are an entrepreneur. You started a really awesome event, Stories to Tell My Daughter.
Yeah.
Will you tell us a little bit about the event itself and how that came to be?
The event is called Stories to Tell My Daughter. It started, I think we did the first one, which you were actually a part of that one, March of 2018, actually. March 17th, 2018.
Good memory.
Yeah, March 17th, 2018 is when we did the first one. This upcoming event will be the fifth one. So that will be March 15th. It's on a Sunday, and it's going to be at the Viking Theater at Grandview University. Doors will open at 4. It'll go from 4 to 6. You asked how it came about. I'm always hesitant to talk about it and tell people that it came from a dream. Like, seriously, it really did. I laid down sometime back in 2011, actually March of 2011, and I had a dream. I know you've heard this before, but and it was about this. I didn't necessarily know that it would take the form that it is taken, but I'd like to say that it came from Dream World. So it was inspired that way. It was so 2011. I had this dream, and took me until 2018 to do it. Mostly because I was scared to do it, because I thought nobody will show up to see this. I really thought it would probably, for the first event, I thought, well, my husband and my children will come. A few of my friends will come. If I get a total of 20 people, I felt that it would be a success. But as you know, we had way more than that. And it was a really good feeling. And I've just kind of kept going ever since.
So, when you had the dream, was it to have a storytelling event, or was it to bring women together to share story? What was different between the dream and what you made reality?
I guess what was different is what I felt, or it felt more like bringing women together. And I think when I think about it now, and I think about all the jobs that I've had and all of my schooling, a lot of it has actually been around communications and storytelling. So of course it makes sense that I would do a storytelling event.
So for anyone who hasn't been to one of these fabulous events, you have women from various backgrounds who
Yep.
come together and they share a story of whatever.
I like to call them wisdom stories, sometimes even healing stories. It is my belief that all of us have a story to share, really, no matter what our age is. I do believe that we all have lived, so we all have some wisdom to share. We all have experiences. We all have things that we've gone through. So all of us have some wisdom that we can share. And I say that all of us because sometimes people think it's only older women, but as you know, I mean, we've run the gamut from, I've had, I think, like 21-year-olds to all the way up to 63. So I just think that we all have wisdom to share.
Yeah. And it seems like storytelling now and sharing stories and going back to oral, sharing of is something that is making a comeback. The Register does something.
Yep.
I've seen what is it? Culture Inc.
Yeah,
I think
they
have the open books.
That's
and
what
that's
it's really
very
good. Yeah.
similar. And that's so amazing because you're right. Every time that I have been a part of or I have listened in on any of these events, you would never guess by looking at the person or even
right.
having a brief conversation with them. And then they tell you this amazing story and you just feel more connected to them.
And that's the thing for me. That's kind of the thing that drives me. I believe that, We live in a society. We are literally bloated with technology. We have
I've never
all.
heard that, bloated with technology.
Yeah. Yeah, and I stole that by the way. But we are, and the internet is supposed to connect us, and while we are connected, we are very disconnected. And for me, the tradition of oral storytelling or narrative storytelling allows us to be connected. It allows you to find yourself in somebody else's story, thus allowing you to have an empathetic moment, to stand in their shoes, to experience that thing that happened to them, to step outside of yourself. And so I really believe in the power of storytelling. I'm glad it's something that is coming back, and it's kind of I want to say a full surge, but that's how I feel. We need it, and I think we need it now more than ever. I think we need it now more than ever.
Well, and just thinking back to one generation ago, like I remember my mom having to do my hair, and I would be sitting there, and you just naturally you have a conversation.
Yeah.
But now if you get on YouTube and you watch, women doing their kids' hair, their kids have electronics in front of them. They're watching something on some kind of tablet or a phone, and there's so much that gets passed on in those moments.
Yes.
That you're right, we're missing out on them, and
we're
even
we're social creatures. Like we are geared for story. Our brains are wired for story. There's a book called Wired for Story. And there's all kinds of scientific study that tell us that humans we really are wired for story. Story is how we understand everything about the world. Everything about us tells a story, from the way that we wear our hair, to the earrings that we wear, to the type of clothes that we wear, how we speak, how we enter a room, even the story of our birth, the time of our birth. I mean, there's just so much there, and there really is a lot of power in that. And the power, again, is our ability to connect. That's the power of it, and that's the importance of it. And I think for a long time we forgot that.
I agree. And I think what these events do is they bring the value back to that. When people go to these events who maybe have not thought about their story or anyone else's story, but they go to these events, and I think it brings that value back to having a story. Thinking about, what is my story? Who would I share my story with? What is the story of those around me, the people that I love?
Right.
That we can't just think that we know someone because they're posting about their life all day, or we've seen what they've eaten for the last 14 meals. That doesn't tell us
That's
their
not
story.
the real story.
Right. And we spend, and you know what, even now, when I think about technology, I feel like we spend a lot of time putting a fake narrative out there, if you think about it.
We do. We've all become public relations people in a sense.
Yeah.
In a small way, we've all learned to, through Facebook or Instagram, put a veneer.
Right.
Put a veneer on things. And not that there's anything wrong with public relations. I don't want anybody to think that. But in a sense, we all know that, we're not always happy every single moment of our lives. We're not. And we're not always as cute as we appear on social media.
Thank God for filters.
I know I'm not. I don't know about other people. I'm not.
Yeah, but I appreciate these storytelling opportunities and events that bring it back, because I think there is the threat of losing so much that has been passed down with story, and not just losing the stories, but losing that desire to want to know the stories.
Yeah, I think to me, what is particularly powerful in bringing a group of women together, particularly women of color, number one, women of color, those stories aren't necessarily out in the mainstream. Those stories don't necessarily get highlighted. And that was kind of the thing that I wanted to do with that. And then just the fact of being a woman, there is so much to share.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much to talk about. There's so much wisdom to give and to share. Sometimes people ask me, is it just for people who have daughters? No, you don't have to have a daughter in order to take the stage, in order to tell a story. You just have to have, I would say, a compelling story that you want to tell, a true compelling story that you want to tell, um, and have enough passion and guts to get out there and do it, and allow your story to come to life for somebody else.
That, I think that's the powerful piece of it, is that the stories are true. These
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at these women, a lot of times you're not only amazed and taken in by the story, but by the fact that they are telling you this story, that they are
Yeah.
up in front of a crowd, and they're not easy stories. I mean, some of
No.
them, they were funny, and some of them were very insightful, but it's still, you are on a stage telling people some
Being very
very
vulnerable.
personal, facts about yourself that might shock people, might change their opinions about you. But I think overall, at least having been one of the women speaking and then in the audience,
Yeah.
you come out of that experience just kind of in awe at what the human spirit can survive, at what you can, and what you can, I guess,
Overcome.
overcome, but then share that with someone, even if it's completely different. Like the women who shared with me, our stories were very different.
Yeah, you guys were the very, very first group. The very first
Excuse
group.
me. But then but it felt like we were all just in it together. There was just a camaraderie. There was a
Yes, there
feeling
was.
of sameness, even though our stories were
We're very
so
different.
unique.
Let me see. We had everything from, we talked about colorism. We talked about there was a bad relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There was eating disorder. Maybe there was relationship advice. Was it how to choose a husband or something like that? I don't remember exactly. But you're
Yes.
right. It did run the gamut. It really did.
So how do you choose the women? Do you, now that you have a few under your belt, are people
Yeah.
just volunteering themselves? Are they
People do
nominating
volunteer
others?
themselves, and they do refer people to me. Um, it's still a process of it's mostly just me. I would like others to join me to help me do this, though. I'm trying to recruit you, Christina. um, I read, okay, so people refer people to me. People will tell me well, they'll say, I have a story to tell, and they'll tell me. And I'll say, okay, and I'll put it in the back of my mind, or, make note when I go home. And also, I pay attention to social media,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes there are posts that will stand out, and I'm like, oh, huh. And I might you know, send them a message and see if there's any interest. If I go to events and I've heard somebody tell a particularly compelling story, and it looks like they would probably be a good match, then I might reach out to them. So there are a variety of ways that I do it.
Do you still do all the logistics yourself of the venue and
Yes.
and all of that? Wow.
Yes.
Which I know is very time consuming, because you
Yes.
also have a job and you have a family.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so what motivates you to do all of that?
It may not look like or feel like activism to anybody, but it's my way of doing activism. It's my way of lifting up the women in my community. It's my way of offering a platform. My belief overall about it is, to create the space, and then I get out of the way. I create the space. I do everything that needs to be done, but then I get out of the way so that it's now about the story being told, because for me, this is the work that needs to be done. So I feel like my job is to create the space, and I get out of the way so that the work can be done, so that the story can do its magic, so it can do its job.
And now, do you?
And that may sound corny to people, but that's
No,
how I see it.
I think that that is a wonderful form of activism, because as we talked about earlier, those stories aren't getting told. And
Nope.
when the audience comes, which is a diverse audience, they are seeing a different perspective of a woman they might not ever talk to for whatever reason, or they might have already some preconceived ideas of what a woman who looks like her, what her life would look like, and then they hear something that is, that is not what they expected, and
Right.
now they walk away. They have to be different now that they have learned this.
I've gotten feedback that people have said to me that they feel like when they come they learn something. I've also gotten feedback where people have said, well, why do you have to tell those kind of stories? And I'm like, what do you mean, those kinds of stories? So sometimes the stories can be hard to hear. But if we're talking about real women who have real experiences that they're sharing,
Right.
it's not going to come gift wrapped. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be easy. So not every story is going to make you smile. And I think, it mirrors real life.
Oh, definitely.
Life is uncomfortable.
It is. It throws you curveballs.
Yeah.
It's ugly. It's messy.
Yeah.
It's sad.
And
it's
sometimes the
things.
stories reflect all of that.
Exactly.
But, one thing I say is that, it kind of runs the gamut. And if we're telling real stories and we're having real women tell their stories, you might get uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that's good.
That's life.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you should look for opportunities to be a little bit uncomfortable, and there is some gratitude in knowing that that is her story up there. As much as I might feel it and I might relate to a piece of it, it's not my story. I don't carry it. I don't have to resolve it.
You don't have to.
Exactly.
But you know what? It might be something for you to reference. Should you ever get into a similar situation?
Right.
Should you ever have to walk somebody else through a situation?
Yeah.
You have something to reference. And maybe it's not your own experience, but it's another piece of knowledge
Right.
that has been shared with you that you may be able to pass on to someone else who may need it.
So now you have a daughter. So what does she think of the event? And has she been to all of them?
She's only been to one. She came to the first one.
Okay.
She thinks it's a cool thing that I do.
Is she ever like, Mom, don't ask me to tell a story?
Yeah. Yeah. I think she thinks it's a cool thing that I do.
Yeah.
She thinks it's a cool thing. She is not, I think I probably get on her nerves more than anything because I'm a little bit obsessive about this, but she's 23. And she's kind of doing her own thing.
Sure.
So,
and so, well, with you being kind of a one-person show, running it, I would imagine that your whole family has to be a little bit involved in one way or another.
They do.
Whether it's, hey, I need you to go pick up, the flyers that are ready, or
Yeah.
can
My
you
husband
be at the door?
does a lot of behind the scenes,
Yes.
whether he wants to or not. I have to give a shout out to my husband, Jason Zilk. He does a lot for me, even though sometimes I probably act like he doesn't. He actually does a lot.
Sure.
Like I remember with the first show, like my daughter, she like prepped all the food. Remember we had all that food, but she prepped a lot of that because I was trying to do that too. Why? I don't know. I don't know. Don't ask me why I was
while
trying
to
do
coach.
Yeah,
I
don't
nervous
know.
Storytellers.
I don't
and
know
all that.
why I thought I was going to be doing that, but I mean that, and they might. I will tell them this is the playlist that I want, and so then they go and they find the music and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really anything that needs to be done, they're usually doing it. And then, of course, friends that I have, some of them will come and they'll sit at the table to do the registration. There are people who come and they help out in the green room with the storytellers, getting them things that they might need, all sorts of things. So,
and has that grown with the popularity of the event? More people who want to volunteer and be a part of it, or
yeah. And a lot of it is really people who have some people have been storytellers, storytellers who have brought their friends along, and they've kind of seen what was going on behind the scenes. Like, you need help back here. So the next time, don't forget about me. Call me. Okay, and I do.
That's good. No, that's good. And
I'm getting better about accepting help. I'm getting better. I'm not sure why I think I can do everything myself. I'm not sure why I think that. It's very stressful.
I have the same issue, so I understand.
I think it's perfectionism is what I think.
Yeah, I think
that's what I think my
could
problem
be. Or
is.
you have this vision and you're very passionate about what it is, and it's really hard to let that go.
I am passionate about it. It's a passion project, but I almost think it's more than that. I shouldn't say it's an obsession. It sounds a little bit stalkerish, but it's kind of an obsession for me. So it's an obsession.
And where do you see it in the next, couple of years, next 5 years, or do you envision this being like your full-time thing and you put this on across the state, across the country?
People have asked me that. It kind of depends. I see it. Yeah, I see it. I see it expanding. I'd like to expand to like Kansas City, Chicago, that type of thing. Not necessarily traveling with the show, but going there and maybe doing a workshop and then we put on.
So that they can kind of put their spin on it and put on a similar production.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about, maybe even managing the storytellers if it's something that they would want to do, kind of like an agent? I mean, are your storytellers wanting to continue to tell their story?
Actually, there are people who have said, we should get together and we should travel and do this. And I don't know if I want to do that. I mean, that's a lot. This is a lot. And it's like, oh my God, you're asking me to think about more stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I know that there are so many different avenues that I can take with it. I don't know.
And what has been your favorite part of this journey so far?
The storytellers themselves. I get a lot from the storytellers. I get to meet women that I may not have known before. I didn't necessarily know you, but I got to know you through working with you. And we've kind of formed a relationship. For me, it's meeting the women and hearing their stories, and then it's also kind of watching what happens, I don't know. It's watching what happens afterwards, what they choose to do. Sometimes, people might tell a hard story, and they might tell me that, that was really cathartic for me. And I'm always so happy to hear that. Always so happy to hear that, because that's kind of the point of it, is to be that for people, I like to think of it as a healing event, because to me that's what it is. And I, again, believe that stories have the power to heal.
Well, and the storytellers, they exhibit a lot of bravery. And I think one of the things, especially with our communities of color, is while we will pass down a million stories within our family, outside of the confines of our family,
yes,
you don't air, dirty laundry kind of thing.
You don't tell the family's business.
So getting up there and sharing a story about a bad relationship or childhood or decisions that you made as a wife, as a mother, it breaks those kind of unsaid rules that we've grown up with,
Right.
which aren't necessarily a bad thing. But when you were talking about healing, what it made me think was that we need more of that, because it's not healing to keep those secrets. And that has hurt so many people, but women in particular,
Yes.
with things like, sexual predators within families,
Yes.
and alcoholism,
Yes.
and domestic violence. Oftentimes, the women are the ones that, taking the brunt of that and not saying anything and not getting help. And so we create this environment of isolation. And then when we finally share, we realize that so many people are going through the same, and they can be our allies in healing.
Yes, and it's okay. Yeah. One of the other things that I feel like it does, and it wasn't necessarily my goal, it's just something that I've noticed, we can begin to talk about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it puts a face on mental health that we hadn't thought about. When someone is talking about a depression that they faced due to whether it be a childhood trauma or sexual assault, because we've had those stories told. It puts a face on mental health, mm-hmm. and it allows us to talk about it. Now, we're not necessarily calling it mental health, but that's what we're talking about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we're talking about. And I think that's really important. And it's one of the reasons why I say this is my form of activism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that is so needed in our community. We're not removed enough from the days where if you had depression or anxiety or eating disorders, OCD, that you were the crazy one in the family. You were
right.
the one no one wanted to be around because you were always sad and you didn't appreciate this. Yes, you were the ungrateful one. You were, there were all these negative titles. And so what that has done in our communities is so damaging. Mm-hmm. Generation after generation of damage for things that they were beyond anyone's control. And, we're wired for story, but we're also wired for depression and anxiety and all of those other mental health issues.
If we don't talk about it, we've got to get it out.
Right.
We've got to get it out.
And when you say, form of activism, I think about the young people in the audience and, hearing these vulnerable stories and even, wow, that's someone who looks like my grandma. Maybe they'll go back and they'll ask about some things in their own history that will help them medically.
That's what I hope.
To be stronger.
That's what I hope. Mm-hmm. It really is. That's what I hope happens. I do remember, like, with the first event and you told your story, and I remember someone coming up to you, and I think she said something like, that's my daughter's story, because her family had gone through the pretty much very similar to what you told about. And I just remember standing back and watching. I was like, wow, okay, I'm on the right path here.
And I would say that probably happens to all of the storytellers multiple times. Anytime that I have shared a story, whenever I'm sharing it, I'm writing it, I'm thinking about it, it feels very insular. But the moment it gets out there, it's no longer just mine. And that not only does that feel good for me, but when I do have people come up and say, that was my story, or my daughter's or my sister's, thank you for sharing it.
Yes.
I realize that I can share without giving an answer, without giving a resolution, without solving their problem. Just the fact that they are not dealing with it alone anymore. And how powerful that is.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, to be able to hear someone else's experience, to be able to get an idea of how they handled a situation, how they got through that, I think that does a lot. Maybe we may not see that or know that right away, but the impact is felt, the impact is there. And so I will keep doing this until I can't do it anymore.
And how has doing it changed you?
For me, I would say that it has made me a better listener, because in order to really hear someone's story, because I sit down and I meet with the storytellers. There's kind of an interview process there. I have to be able to listen, and I have to be able to sit with the story that they're telling or they think they might like to tell. So it's made me a better listener. I would also say that it is made me a more empathetic person. I thought I was empathetic before, but I don't think so. I'm more empathetic now.
And what has been the most challenging part of putting on this production time and time again?
The most challenging part, the fatigue that I feel afterwards. I'm tired afterwards. And it usually takes me, sometimes it takes me about 2 weeks to kind of get back to myself, because that's a lot to absorb. Because I kind of, after everything's said and done, I kind of just, I don't know, want to hibernate. I don't necessarily want to talk to people for a while, but that's hard to do.
Right.
But mostly I'm fatigued afterwards. It is truly a labor of love, but I'm putting a lot of energy out.
Sure.
And so when everything is said and done, I just need to rest.
Well, I mean, not only is putting on any production is going to be stressful, it's difficult.
Right.
You're wondering, are people going to
all of that
show up and all of that? But then on top of that, what you're putting out there, knowing that it's your form of activism, and that the stories that your storytellers, whom you have essentially invited to put themselves in this very vulnerable space, you carry some of that with you, I would imagine.
I do.
So it's not only their story, but it's holding them and their story safe.
Yeah, it's in a sense holding space, and I'm very protective when it comes to the storytellers. So as far as it's things like, making sure that there is food and water and whatever else they may need when we're in the green room, trying to make myself available. Sometimes I'm really great about that. Sometimes it can be hard to juggle sometimes. So, but I make it work, and they forgive me and love me anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's an experience for all involved.
Yeah.
And, when you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to put on, I know I want to do this again. Do you go with a date first and then find your storytellers? Do you find your storytellers and then agree on a date? How does the whole process come together?
It's always around the same time every year. So it's always going to be over spring break in March. That has more to do with the space that I'm in, because it's that time frame is open. I just find that it's easier for me to stick with the same dates, same times. I know that I have this venue, so that's always done first. I spend, again, because I'm constantly on the lookout and people are sending me information. So I'm constantly there's a running list in my head. Okay. There's constantly a running list. I'm constantly listening and looking, and there's so many interesting people in the world.
Yeah. So how do you narrow it down? Is it because this topic might be too close to this one? Like, how do you decide, okay, these are going to be the stories that we tell this time?
So before, I didn't really have a theme, if you remember. It was simply stories to tell my daughter, and you decided what story you wanted to tell. One of the things that I began doing is, if, when I'm sitting down and I'm having conversation with you, I might there are themes. People may not realize this, but sometimes when you're talking to people, there are certain themes and patterns that just keep coming up. And so I might point that out to you. We might have a conversation, and then later, after I'm put away my notebook and computer and all of that, and you start telling me something else, and I'm like, oh, really? And I might think to myself, maybe that's really the story that you want to tell. But I leave that up to you.
Mm-hmm.
I leave that up to you. This time, I was looking at the theme of beauty, not necessarily physical beauty, because that's easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when do you feel the most beautiful? One of the storytellers that we're going to have, she is a well-known activist here in Des Moines. And I'm really excited to hear her story of beauty. And I remember when I was talking to her, I said, your activism, your strength, your fearlessness, all of that's beauty. That's beautiful. All of that. So we're not just talking about, what you look like physically. It's all about what's coming from the inside,
Mm-hmm.
that inner beauty.
So how many storytellers, will you have at this event?
I'm looking at 5 to 7, and I say 5 to 7. It's possible that I may have some that might drop out for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
that may not be able to do it.
Do you usually have like an alternate or someone, or they drop, you just go with the flow? Now we have 5 and that's what we have.
Well, I've had that happen. And so, we just kind of went on.
Yeah,
We
it's
just,
the nature of the beast when you have an event,
you just
never
go
know.
on,
Mm-hmm.
you figure it out, you make the
Mm-hmm.
adjustment, and you go.
Yeah.
So, and that may happen. I mean, I can't control it. And, they can't necessarily control the different things that are happening in their lives either.
Sure.
So,
Okay, so we know that it's going to be March 15th
mm-hmm.
at Grandview University, the Viking Theater.
Yep.
It's going to be, did you say 4 p.m. is when it starts?
Doors will open at 4 p.m.
Okay, and then the first storyteller will begin about what time?
Let's see. I usually, probably about 4:30.
4:30.
Because I come on and then I talk and introduce and do my spiel. And then the storytellers come in. So about 4:30, probably the first storyteller will go on.
And then would you recommend people buy tickets ahead of time because it might sell out? Or do you think buying at the door works?
So you can buy tickets online. Those tickets are going to be $20. Tickets will go on sale on Saturday. So this Saturday, you'll be able to purchase tickets online. If for some reason you don't get to do that and you want to purchase tickets at the door day of, you absolutely can.
Okay. And where can folks buy tickets online?
It will be Eventbrite.
Eventbrite? Okay.
Eventbrite, and there will be a event page on Facebook. We actually have a Facebook page, so you'll be able to go there and purchase tickets from there.
So you can go to Stories to Tell My Daughter on Facebook, and you'll find the link there for Eventbrite. That's also where you'll find out who the storytellers are. Are you going to kind of creep them out little by little like you've done before, kind of tease people?
Yeah.
That's fun. No, that's fun. I like that. I like looking and being like, ooh, who's coming up this? I'm always curious who's going to be there.
We've got, again, a really diverse group and a really diverse selection of stories.
Very neat. And so are you in the process now of coaching them? Are you meeting with them regularly and coaching them through? Are they meeting together and coaching each other?
So we will be doing that. It's people's schedules. I mean, it's life. So that is something that we do. Yeah. So it's over the phone. So I've done FaceTime. I've done, we meet. It just kind of depends. So it's a combination of things.
Very cool. Very cool. So for more information, you recommend the Facebook page.
I do.
You can just go to Facebook, Stories to Tell My Daughter, and it will come up there.
Yep.
And then on that Facebook page, if they wanted to reach out with a question or a recommendation, a nomination, it all goes to you, right?
Yeah, they can send a message. They can use Messenger through there. It'll come directly to me. I usually answer right away if I can. If not, if I don't get back to you that day, I probably will get back to you the following day. But I usually try and get to those pretty quickly.
And is there any, for someone who's never attended, what is there anything that you would like to tell them what to expect? Anything, any bit of advice?
Come with an open mind. Come with an open mind. People always ask if they can bring their daughters. Yes, you can bring your daughters. That is encouraged. You can bring your daughters, you can bring your sons, your husbands, your boyfriends. You can't bring the dog or the cat. But yeah, you bring everybody. But when it comes to children, I would say that this really is an event, sometimes depending on the nature of the story. I would not bring a child younger than 13 to the event because, as you know, sometimes the stories are heavy. Yeah.
I mean, if you do, you'd have to be prepared to answer some questions.
Yep.
And maybe you want to. Maybe you want to use it as a conversation starter. Who knows?
Right. And I've had mothers message me and ask me, and I explain. I explain, and sometimes they choose not to come, and that's okay. But I like to be honest and upfront about that. I think that's important for them to know. Some people might actually be triggered by the things that they hear. I think that's important. I haven't done like a trigger warning, but probably in the future, and even for this one, I'll probably put something like that
in the program.
Yeah, so that people understand. So for those who might be triggered upon hearing certain things, and it's not that, they are going into graphic detail because they're not. But I think
it doesn't take that. Sometimes it's just the mention of something.
And I think, it's good to be respectful and thoughtful about others in our community who might have.
I mean, when you were talking about mental health, I think that's a great way of preserving your mental health. Yeah. You know what your triggers might be. Because I know for me, they change and I don't, that's not going to trigger me. And the next thing I know, I'm triggered. And so, but just to at least be warned, you can kind of mentally prepare yourself. Yeah. Or step out if you think you should. Or, that's good. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And even though I was part of the first one and I went to some after, but being able to just talk about back. Well, we can talk about that.
We want you to come back
the show. And I've never shared that particular story in any other storyteller event that
really?
I have. Yep, I felt like that one, because it was your first show, and it was so I just wanted to preserve that story for that space.
Oh wow! Thank you. I feel very honored, but I feel honored that people want to take this journey with me, and that they feel the need to be vulnerable enough to share their story, to pass on their knowledge. Mm-hmm. I always feel honored that I'm able to create a space for that. And it's part of the reason why I think when you first did it, you were like, oh my gosh, we're going to be that close. Yeah, we're going to be that close.
Yeah, the first row was like 2 knees away from where we were sitting.
All intentional, so that so that we feel connected, so that we're able to, so that you really feel the people in the room and they really feel you. Yeah. So it was all intentional, all intentional.
Well, it was definitely one of my favorite storytelling events. I've done a few others, and that one definitely felt intimate and it felt intentional. It felt like a stage that was set for people like me. I typically feel like it is a stage, and I'm lucky to have been asked to be on it. But that one felt like this is a stage that was made with me in mind, as opposed to it's going to be there regardless. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels different when it's for women, by women, particularly women of color.
Yeah. So everything about it is, from the way that it's set up to the fact that we wear white, to the colors that are used. It's all intentional. It's all intentional.
Good. Well, I'd like to take some time to kind of talk off topic and just get to know guests a little bit better. And what are 5 of your favorite things about living in Des Moines. And of course, your event can certainly be one of
Well,
them.
that's number one. 5 of my favorite things. The World Food Prize. So whenever I go out of town, I become an ambassador for the World Food Prize.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know my fascination with it, but I'm really fascinated with it. And to me, it's like the Nobel Peace Prize, but for food. And I just think it's awesome that we have such a highly esteemed event that happens here in Des Moines, and we have all these scientists coming from all over the world. We're an agricultural state, so we know about food, and this prize is given out to people who are using their scientific gifts to feed the world. I just think that's awesome.
It is very cool.
So there's the World Food Prize. They can call me if they ever want PR or anything. I'll do it. So there's the World Food Prize. There is the art festival. Again, I love the fact that we have this burgeoning arts and culture scene. But I feel like our art festival is on par with anything that you would find in Chicago, San Francisco. I just think so.
It is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. So let's see. So my show, World Food Prize, Art Festival. Okay. So what else? Number 4 would be, okay, the food. I don't have like a particular place because I like going to all the places that I can. Sorry. I think we have a great food scene.
And it's changing and growing.
Yeah, all the time. We have all these wonderful cultures mixing and melding and
cooking.
all these stories. Food tells stories, right?
For sure, yeah.
But it's in it, and it's all good. It's all good. So probably, I think next week I'm going to meet somebody at is it the Puerto Rico
restaurant?
I love that
Windsor
place.
Heights?
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, so it's the food. And I guess it's Puerto Rico restaurant because I really love their food. What else? And so I would also add to that list Gateway Dance Theater. So my daughter started dancing with Gateway when she was about 4, and my family has been involved with Gateway Dance Theater ever since. So, and it's been a part of kind of my children's growing up. I've done all sorts of things for them. Pretty much whatever Penny asked me to do. You know Penny, so you know how that goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Penny asks
and you do. That's
yeah.
right. You do. You do. And so, it's a great place. It has been a great place. And I consider the Gateway family, my family, because, they've been a part of a lot of our a lot of really important moments in my life. So that's a really, really important place for me in my top 5 of favorite things.
And they've been around for a long time. Their dedication to Des Moines and
to the
phenomenal.
Arts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a really great diverse list. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Teresa. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Christina.
And sharing your story with us.
Yep.
All right, and thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned. We'll bring another great podcast to you very soon.